And we are live. So, welcome to episode 224 of An American Werewolf in New Jersey. I am the American Werewolf. In the house today, this evening, however you want to frame it according to your time zone, I've got a first-time guest here. I've got Bill Scurry. And Bill and I have the occasional comment back and forth on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it. And I just, kind of enjoy what he has to say a lot of times. Most of the time, almost all the time, it's about film, which is, what I'm all about. And so I just decided, fuck it. I like interviewing and just talking to people. So I thought, I'm just going to start asking people if they want to come on and shoot the shit. And Bill was one of the first people I looked up, and he was cool enough to say yes. So thank you very much for your time today, man.
Hey, I appreciate you called me cool. That's as much praise as I've had all week. Thank you, sir.
It's always good, to get another perspective. I mean, even if people are disagreeing with you, a lot of times, I'm open to having my mind changed, so you never know what a conversation is going to lead to, good chat. I keep it, real low key and almost sort of backyardish. So, it always seems to work.
Yeah, I looked at your wares on this channel. It looks like you cover a wide range of topics, and judging by your style in the background there, you're well into the nerd camp. Everything that's my language. We're all speaking the same language here, I think.
Yeah, rooted in a lot of things, not rooted in all of them. And I'm willing to learn. I don't know how much I'm going to take up, but I'm okay to listen. I mean, I think that's part of what makes these sorts of things enjoyable is just the willingness to listen, not necessarily to wait for your turn to talk, and that kind of thing. So thank you again for your time. Let people, as much as you're comfortable, let's start out this way. Tell, people a little bit about yourself, where you come from, so on and so forth. And let's start it out this way. What hooked your interest in film? Was it a specific film? Was it a specific genre? Was it a period of time? Was it a parental influence? How did you get started with movies?
Well, first and foremost, this is from the American Werewolf to the American Caesar. I run a shingle, if you want to call it that, called American Caesar Enterprises, which is pretty much just my YouTube channel. It's like for a decade, after having a civilian job, I went into filmmaking, sort of low-level filmmaking on YouTube, working with a lot of independent actors and comedians and things like that. I did that for a decade, from about 2010 to 2020 or so, and then changed tacks. Lately, I do a lot of self-made videos in terms of like essays about film culture. It's on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/amcaesar. And I podcast a lot. I got my own podcast about popular culture I do on a weekly basis with a friend of mine. I'm in Amsterdam, the Netherlands. I'm a former New Yorker, as I was going over with Werewolf before this. My bona fides are that I grew up on the East Coast, grew up on Long Island, born in 75, so I'm 48 years old. And it's a long way of getting to this other question in terms of how do you get into movies. I got this real chauvinism, man, about the epoch in which we grew up. And, I'm not going to sit here and claim that we had the best of everything. However, we had a really good banquet for a good number of years. If you had parents who were interested in buying you tickets and taking you to the last few drive-ins, because we actually had some on Long Island back in the early to mid 80s, the birth of the multiplex was coming, I guess, towards the end of the 1980s. But I remember being in the theater in 84 seeing Ghostbusters. I saw Superman 3, where Ross Webster's sister was encased with robotics by the giant evil computer, and it was body horror. I saw Poltergeist in the theater. The girl was swallowed up by the TV with the static, man. The examples go on and on. And I hate nostalgia. I hate sort of painting this brush that, some guy from the 60s will talk about Mickey Mantle and Roger Maris, and that was like the best way to be a kid outside the Ebbett Fields or the Polo Fields or whatever. And that's great. Everybody's got their own myopia about the time they grew up in. All I know is that this is sort of the key to how we do business, is that we did have this great entrance of things like Ghostbusters, things like Beverly Hills Cop, things like Aliens, really, magical things for kids to watch and just sort of get sucked up into the world of filmmaking. to set great bedrock for us to like just love all sorts of film. Beyond that, it's just a great soil in which to grow up. And I'm assuming that your upbringing kind of came from that same kind of place.
Yeah, let me say real quick, the link to your, for people in the chat, the link to your YouTube channel and the link to your X profile are in the description. So give Bill a look. And I saw his channel too, and he's got some good stuff up there. And it's intelligent commentary, which is, I think, sorely lacking in the face of so much, all the time. I don't know of another word for angsty, kind of, doom goblinish, kind of stuff. Yeah, I mean, I know exactly what you're talking about. It's really easy to feel silly about, feeling that you're wearing rose-colored glasses and that, you're like De Niro, narrating like the end of a Scorsese movie, with little Jimmy and the shoe shines. We didn't know how good we had it, that kind of thing. But, I also grew up here in South Jersey, this hallowed mecca of civilization. And 2 miles from where my parents grew up, there was a drive-in theater. It was called the Circus Drive-In. So I was born in 68, so I'll be 56 this year. I was not exposed to an indoor theater until The Empire Strikes Back. That was the first movie that I ever saw in an indoor theater. So Star Wars. Before it was called The New Hope, it was called Star Wars. Ridley Scott's Alien. The 76 King Kong, with Jessica Lange and Jeff Bridges and Charles Grodin. And I didn't understand what I liked about Jessica Lange, but I knew I liked something. There's something I'm like, all right, this is okay. Even like ridiculous films like Burt Reynolds and The Longest Yard, and these sorts of things were all things I saw where you didn't have a local frequency that tuned into your AM channel or your low end FM, frequency. There was just that metal speaker that hung on the inside of your window, and it was that's not Dolby Surround, that's not 4K or anything like that. But I'll probably remember that more than most things that I see today, and, just watching the people get picked off one by one in Alien. I just went to the 45th anniversary re-release. It was the first time I ever saw it on the big screen. And those sorts of things. Yeah, it's such an imprint for me. It was also a lot of home viewing, being introduced by my mom. To like the Universal classics with like Lugosi and Karloff, what Claude Rains was doing. Claude Rains was just terrifying. He gets so little credit in terms of the Universal, but then, a lot of it for me was around the action-y horror kind of stuff, at that age and being a guy, that kind of thing. Translating over to the Hammer classics with Christopher Lee and those sorts of things. And then, you're moving into the era of action, so it's like, Schwarzenegger and it's just, wow, fertile soil, as you said.
Yeah.
Fertile soil.
Yeah, for sure. And here's one of those like, where are you now questions. What was your first VHS cassette tape? Do you remember like actually playing in the house? What is your tactile sense memory of that?
I don't remember what film it was off the top of my head. I just know that it was pretty damn amazing. And before the era of Blockbuster, there were just these homegrown video stores, and it was like, Jimmy's Video Store, there's one place, I still remember the guy's name was Ray, and Ray's, Hollywood Video, or, not the franchise, but like people were calling it whatever. And, people don't appreciate all this access that you have nowadays to being able to pull up anything at any time. It was catch as catch can, man. And all the new films, you may not see it for 2 weeks if you weren't getting the jump or you weren't getting lucky, because people were grabbing them and holding on to them, and for dear life. Yeah. And then also, the advent of like cable television, and channels like HBO. in the early 80s. We didn't get that in this era because, I was joking about this being a Mecca. Nothing could be further from the truth. But we got some sort of alternate. It was called Womeco Home Theater, WHT.
WHT. Oh, I heard of it. We did not have it, but I definitely heard of it. Sure.
Yeah, well, the people across the highway had access to everything. Us on our side of the highway did not. And instead, we just had WHT. And so WHT didn't start till 8 o'clock. But you got to catch some relatively, decent movies. And then, I think after 11, it turned into Skinamax or something. It was like some Andy Warhol, Frankenstein. And, this isn't Frankenstein. My parents are like, this isn't Frankenstein. You're going to bed. I'm like, it's Frankenstein. They're like, it's not Frankenstein. Get the hell out of here.
What is Joe D'Alessandro and Frankenstein, kid? That's what they're asking you.
I've never seen boobs in a Frankenstein movie before, but there they were, and some guy's just burying his face, right in there. And I'm like, this isn't Peter Cushing. This is, no, it's, I'm saying that to myself, but I'm telling my parents it's Frankenstein, so, it was just fun, and it was exciting. And unlike today, if a movie sucked, it was still fun. If a movie sucked, it was still fun. And this was the 80s we're talking about. There were a lot of shitty movies out there. Yeah. And I watched all of them. And even the good ones that were shitty were fun to watch. Remember Cannon and Cannon Films and Carol Co. and all these different sort of cocaine fueled, fever dreams that people were, coming up with in the 80s, Chuck Norris's entire career was made off shitty movies, but it's an all-time classic. It wasn't like today, where, everybody seems to be, everybody with a microphone and a phone is a movie expert, and they've just drained the fun, out of things, the enjoyment, the simple enjoyment of, it's ironic because while they do that, they'll regale you with stories of movies from the 80s that were so stupid and just are still stupid, but you were able to enjoy them, but they don't make that connection nowadays.
And some of the people that made these movies you're describing from back in the day were just as craven and just as capitalist as the goddamn fools who make movies today. What was the difference in their sort of lack of professionalism, their lack of due diligence, and the just cadged together of, thrown together films made out of whatever bitter ends you had hanging around in terms of film and special effects, and just fuck it, who cares about quality? All we need to do is make a B movie or something that's going to go right to VHS cassette. Was there some quality of that shit that was somehow better because it was more hermetic than some programmer you'll find on Netflix, which is made from, I have to say, probably from the same impulse, but it's just made more cynically. I can't really understand when I click through Netflix and I look at all the options you have, all these little tiles for movies that are imaginary that I'm not even sure are completely real. I think some of them are just Photoshops or AIs, but it's there's just as much a lack of attention to quality today as there was since say 1983. But the difference is that you could watch something like Tombs of the Blind Dead or Megaforce, with Barry Bostwick, and it was just as cheesy. It just sort of felt was the lack of sophistication the difference? Is that why I watched Megaforce 10,000 fucking times? I have no idea, but live in a different world.
Yeah, we do. Maybe we were a little less presumptuous. I don't know. This idea that everyone, because it didn't always matter. We sort of ignored the movies that the critics loved. So I'm 13. I don't care about Out of Africa. I want to watch.
I was going to say Meryl Streep. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I don't care about the Natural. Okay, The Natural was okay, but these sorts of movies, I don't care about Sophie's Choice. I wanted to watch The Terminator. I wanted to watch Invasion USA. I just covered Invasion USA about 6 months ago just for shits and giggles, and I hadn't seen it since '85, and it's just terrible. It's terrible, and it's I think Richard Jekyll is is the bad guy, and he's having these post-traumatic stress dreams about getting kicked in the face by Chuck Norris, and you're just and I'm just people people loved it back then, and they're considered like, by the hardcore, guys of our age, or maybe even a little older. Those are the classics. That's the good stuff. I hope that, at some point we can get back to that and not be so damn negative, about everything all the time, because it feels like it sets up this lose-lose, sort of dynamic. Because if something is good, that gives you an opportunity to say it's good, and it's not shitty like this thing that I've been hammering on for forever.
Mm-hmm. I feel like, we are part of the same clique, and a lot of people bitch about film Twitter. I mean, you want to call it that. Let's just call it that for lack of a better term. The thing is, I would say the last 7 to 8 years is when I found a lot of these Twitter mutuals, and they're not people. First of all, they're not local. Even though I lived in New York City, I met a bunch of people there, but I sort of found like the network of people syndicated outwards to Canada, to parts of Europe, to parts of Africa, to the West Coast, all over the United States, all over the freaking United Kingdom. And it's like all of a sudden this explosion of input for all these different people who, some people were younger, some people were older, and, geographically they came up with different sort of movie traditions, viewing traditions, what their idea of like a Sunday afternoon movie was, or what their idea of cable after 11 o'clock with the tits and stuff like that was. I loved seeing all of a sudden it was this giant spectrum, this panoply. It meant so many things to so many different people. But one thing I think I really love is this kind of like wild idea that I've found a group of people who almost have this very liberal sense of watching any film and kind of enjoying them all, just like giving a shot to anything you put in front of your face, sitting down, giving it 90 minutes to 2 hours or thereabouts, and not turning it off, and just making a judgment based on whatever you think. Like, every movie can be good. I really feel like every movie can be fun if you sat. You don't have. It doesn't have to be a good movie. You have to like everything about it. But I always feel like it's worthwhile watching a movie, especially if someone I trust tells me the same thing. It's like, this may not be a great movie, but I fucking enjoyed it. And it's like, you may enjoy the 90 minutes you spend on it too. And I will sit down and I will root my ass in a chair and feel like, you know what, this was a good spend of 90 of my life's minutes, because I feel like that person sent me a message and I had my own experience watching this. It could have been a piece of shit, but it's just like, man, I had my own experience with this piece of shit. That's like the most fun thing I could possibly do.
I guess the way that I put it together is to say that we're all welcome to enjoy anything. It doesn't necessarily make it the highest quality. But liking something doesn't make it good. But like whatever the hell you want to like. Like everything is not equal. You can't say that. Like if I wanted to look at I don't know, Invasion USA or whatever, Invasion USA, and say that. If I compare that with M from like 1931, it's not the same thing, But I mean, I laughed my ass off watching Invasion USA, and so for that Pacific, I enjoyed it, and that counts for something, that means something. It doesn't mean that if I really give it a discerning eye, which I have the channel here to do, that I won't find fault with it, because I do, and we'll discuss it. But for the most part, we'll discuss it in a fun way. There are lots of movies that we covered. I think we did that Stephen King movie, Silver Bullet, and it's a terrible movie, or we looked at like Children of the Corn. I'm like, oh my God, this is terrible. Like, why didn't he just adapt his short story? That was so much better. It's like that purple fart cloud at the end, and the whole cornfield goes up. Like, what the hell am I watching?
Gary Busey was great in Silver Bullet, and Everett McGill was also very good too. I found a lot to enjoy in that movie.
Yeah. I just watched it the other day. Like, we covered it like 2 years ago or something like that. But like 2 or 3 months ago, I grabbed the DVD and put it in there. And I love Gary Busey as was he Uncle Red? And he's just down in Wild Turkey, like sitting at his sister's couch with this big 750, and he's just drinking it like it's iced tea. He's a fucking maniac. Well, he's a maniac. Yeah. He's a maniac in real life. That was sad.
Yeah, he's so hardcore though. Yeah.
It's tragic what happened to him, because he went from Academy Award nominations for like the Buddy Holly movie. And even like if you look at Donner's Lethal Weapon, I mean, Mr. Joshua was a terrifying character. I mean, within the context of what the film allowed. Yeah, within the context of what the film allowed. And, he isn't in it for very much. He doesn't come on really until the end, where they line him up against Gibson. But, he was a really great actor. And then, unfortunately, he had that motorcycle accident. And, I guess he, suffered significant TBI, and, his career never was really the same again. But he's always enjoyable to watch. Like, I love Point Break. I love watching Point Break, like anytime that it's on, or, just about anything that I see him in.
The movie I just saw recently, I watched Buddy Holly. I hadn't seen it. I didn't realize I hadn't seen it since I was like probably 11 years old. Okay. So I gave it a shot. I'm like, Jesus, Buddy Holly's great. Gary Busey's incredible. I feel like the movie is so good, you don't even notice that he's 10 years older than the actual guy was, like, when he died. It doesn't matter because the movie is just like, it's this really hermetic atmosphere where he's giving you a great Buddy Holly. But the one that I thought was just fucking nuts was Carney. I think it was 78, 77, the movie he made with Robbie Robertson and Jodie Foster, where they played the guys inside this Kenny McMillan's in it too, which is great. I mean, you talk about everything that you want in a movie. Gary Busey, Jodie Foster, Kenneth McMillan.
Okay.
And if people haven't seen Carney,
I haven't seen it. Okay.
Yeah, it's a little hard.
I'll write it down.
It's one of those like folk Americana type movies. It really shows you the way they used to shoot small towns in America in the 70s up until the 80s. It wasn't all just Los Angeles, New York, and now it's all just like Atlanta. But I remember when they just where they would shoot films in like Iowa or Illinois or Kentucky, and they would set them there because you could get the money to shoot a film in a small place, what we call flyover now. And it's like they would set it there, and you'd actually see what a place looks like. And Carney is just one of those things that's like about the place where it took place. It was pretty cool.
That when I think of that, I always think of was it that Malick film, Days of Heaven? Is that the one? Where they're just out there in the middle of the wheat, like the whole movie is just shot in like a big wheat field. It seems like, and it's just this, with the beautiful colors and the, you forget how, we look at other films and beautiful settings and things like, film that's shot in Paris or something like that. We just talked about Olivier Assayas's Personal Shopper, which is shot in Paris, but you forget how beautiful America is, and just, how many things there are to see. You'll never see all of it. Hold on a second. We got a couple of comments here. We got Patrick from Have Cheetah Will View, and he says he's an IFC Films movie snob. And they get it right sometimes. The Midnights, the horror stuff, a little more missed than hit, but they're usually pretty enjoyable. We go back and forth, and he's saying, hey to both of us. What's happening, man? And he says Gary Busey was really talented, before his accident. But, we still love him anyway. We still love him. Where are we today? It seems like post-COVID, let's preface that a little bit. In 2008, something happened that I never thought would happen as a child. Comic book movies seem to have taken over everything. And the MCU quickly became, and I talked about this about a year or so ago, the biggest movie franchise in history. It's like $22 billion. It's like double Star Wars. And they did it in like 10, 12 years or something like that, as opposed to, Godzilla that's been around for 60 years, or James Bond or Star Wars or anything like that. And it just, it was, your cinema houses were just saturated with this storyline of enjoyable films. Some of them were actually good to great, I thought. I own most of them, behind me here up until Endgame. That sort of thing. And so we started getting these things that kind of got snickered at back around 16, but like Scorsese's Message. Like you're kind of pushing, regular cinema out of the way here, which kind of got derided. And then, COVID hit and everything got shut down. And suddenly, the theater houses weren't available anymore. And then Hollywood, they weren't filming anything anymore. And then, like I said, we also had the rise of these sort of, mega channels where like everybody became a film critic, so 1 million or 2 million subs, and they're like, this sucks. Taking 2 million people along with them, so ticket sales, and these sorts of things. Now, Hollywood seems to be making kind of trying to, get itself on the rebound. I try to get myself out there every weekend or, every other weekend out to, catch something that's new because, I don't want the film industry in my country to collapse. I enjoy seeing movies, even the bad ones. I'm still talking about, whatever it is I'm talking about, Silver Bullet, Invasion USA, whatever. Where are we today? Because it seems like Hollywood was in a lot of red. You also had streaming and that particular bubble and, all this money going out and then these $300 million films just tanking, maybe $500 million after, promotional budgets. What's your opinion on where things stand today?
Yeah, that's a naughty question because there's a bunch of different things at play, a lot of unintended consequences. I'm going to go back to this phenomenon that happened. I want to say it must have been the early 2000s, from 2000 to 2010. I think somewhere along the line, there were a couple of like white papers put out by film studios. At that point, there was more of them because a lot of them, they folded in and they got swallowed up by others along the way since in that 25-year span or so. But there was a very conscious decision. They said, what we need to do is make fewer movies and they need to be bigger. We need to take swings at billion-dollar movies almost all the time. And so they had a very conscious decision. They didn't stumble into it. They said, what we're going to do is take these shots at making movies that like Pirates of the Caribbean movies, Johnny Depp things, Iron Man,
Avatar.
Avatar is a perfect example, although Avatar is one of these examples that, it's affixed to a very idiosyncratic creator. It's more like a Jim Cameron movie than it is an IP thing. But yes, that's exactly the point. And so when they decide, we're going to spend upwards of, $150 million on a budget up to $200, $300 million on a budget was no longer a weird thing. If they can make 1 billion, 1.5 billion, up to 2 billion worldwide, that sort of thing, especially when they still had access to the Chinese market, which they don't anymore. That door has sealed shut behind them. And so they decided to essentially kill the middle of the market. So you have, as my friend James Hancock says, tent poles and tadpoles, either these tiny, low-budget Jason Blumhouse movies. The guy has managed to figure out how to crush the low end of the market of making these tiny movies that are all shot under 25 million, probably a lot less under than 25 million. Yeah. And the movies that are all shot over 100, over 150, over $250 million also, and then trilogies on top of that. So that was the beginning of this phenomenon. Add to that the idea that it worked like gangbusters because all of a sudden Jon Favreau can make a Jungle Book movie, which is really pedestrian as far as I'm concerned, but he ran away with the bank. Or you can just keep making Shrek movies or Kung Fu Pandas and all that stuff. I'm not shitting on these movies. A lot of people enjoy them. I like some of them better than others, but the quality is its own thing. But I think that when you couple in what they were doing to distribution in terms of the theatrical experience, COVID came in at the absolute wrong time and rewrote the rules of theatrical exhibition, where so much of the motion picture business is still rooted in making the money off of theaters. And yet, like the world is almost telling them what we want to do is sit at home and watch these things on a phone between our knees on either a subway or on a commuter flight from, LaGuardia to Orlando International Airport, watching The Irishman as it was intended, on a fucking iPhone Pro Max 15 or something like that. So, I think we're looking at this contraction right now where they kind of can't make theatrical work as well as they once did. Theater chains are falling apart. Other than boutique theater chains, i.e., you mentioned IFC before, but IFC has a boutique theater on 6th Avenue in Manhattan, which is one of my favorite places to go. And there's the Alamo Draft House, and there's all these places like iPick theaters, and they're premium exclusive, but it's ridiculous. Upcharging to make up yield in the business to take the place of volume is suicidal, but that's what they're doing anyway. And then on top of that, this is a fucking shallow year because of the coming out of the strikes. You were set up to have like bullshit content this year, where they are trying to like, what are they? I guess you're stretching. Deadpool has to be, something that lasts for 3 months a year.
Oh my God! Yeah. Is that where we're at? Jesus Christ! But at the same time, I was just looking through my email, and I have a couple of Regal multiplexes in my area. So I just get I have the app, and so for $21.99, I can see whatever I want, unless it's like a Fathom Events kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's free, so I mean, even with what might consider to be a small number or a crappy number or a bunch of low budget releases or not so great releases. I've already seen 11 films this year.
Right.
There's still stuff out there to see. A lot of it has been smaller. I got to see David Dalsmalchian doing Late Night with the Devil.
Great. It was great. I liked it.
It was great. We're covering that tonight, actually. I'm going to do another. This was rare because I just happened to have the day off to do an afternoon stream, so it worked well with our time frame. But I usually do an 8 p.m. stream. And it was fantastic. I mean, I think that was under $2 million he made that for. Yeah. I got to see Sydney Sweeney and do that nun-exploitation sort of thing, Immaculate. That was under 10 million.
It was very good. Yeah, no.
Yeah, under $10 million. Under $10 million. So I maybe we're starting to get back to these sort of non-CGI, bloatfest sort of just, sort of low budget. Well, not low budget, but mid-budget kind of films, released again. These sorts of things. Maybe it'll never get back to the way that it was, and it probably shouldn't. Until you get a James Cameron or a really huge name making, a $300 million film, because it's just too much of a risk.
You mentioned, it's funny because one of it sticks in my brain. You said Out of Africa before, and you're your opening remarks. And I think Out of Africa is, it means a lot of things to me because it was at one point one of those movies that I felt like I'm going to grow up, I'm going to mature into the kind of adult that is able to get into it Out of Africa and then is able to understand what I'm seeing and appreciate who Robert Redford is and who Sidney Pollack is and all these things. And the thing is, a movie like Out of Africa is exactly what the market doesn't give you now, or whatever the equivalent is. To find a movie that is made by a guy like Sidney Pollack, who made movies for grown-ups for the top end of the market, made a lot of money back in the day too. Sidney Pollack made movies like Tootsie. The guy made so much money, it was preposterous. But his films were designed with, a sort of age range and a kind of with are they city dwellers? I'm not quite sure. Some of these movies were comedies. Some of them were a little intellectual. Some of them were, pot boilers. Some of them were book adaptations like The Firm. Yeah, he made The Firm along the way, movies like that. And, you are missing these bits of grammar, these bits of vocabulary from the market. And, a whole generation of people is growing up now. They're going to the theater and they never have a chance to see a Nora Ephron movie. Nora Ephron, Jesus, she's probably been dead for what, 10, 15 years thereabouts? But she was an indelible part of those movies. Like a movie I think she wrote Harry Met Sally and Rob Reiner shot it. And it's exactly the sort of thing that you won't find a lot of it. And the only thing close to it was the Sydney Sweeney movie with Glenn Powell, Was Anybody But You, and that's not on the same scale as a Rob Reiner movie. However, it is almost like that same gap, that same missing tooth in the market. That's what it was supposed to have. So you can't find something like that now.
No, something that addresses something for actual adults. Something that and like I would think of Minghella with all right, The English Patient.
Cold Mountain. Yeah, one of those things. Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I would think that kind, because I'm a huge Ondaatje fan. So, reading Ondaatje's books and, these sorts of things. And, okay, let's give it a shot. And it's fantastic. I mean, it's beautiful to watch. And you just got this great story and these, these beautiful lines and these well-crafted performances. And, that's like an ensemble cast.
Yeah.
You've got Binoche, you've got Fiennes, you've got Defoe, you've got who else is in that thing?
Colin Firth is in it, for God's sake. Kristen Scott Thomas. Yeah,
Kristen Scott. It's tour de force. I would think that there would be an opening for that kind of thing today. I don't know in today's what seems to be this production-driven, producer-driven kind of Hollywood, if there would be the willingness to take a risk for it. Yeah. Everything seems very risk-averse. Like you said, part 7, part 12 of, whatever, this, that, or the other. And I think that also, the superhero fatigue, these sorts of things, we're not getting that. We're not getting drama anymore. You're getting 4-hour Scorsese movies on Apple TV. And he's about to release this Megapolis, or these sorts of things. There's a huge hole in the market that I think would be filled by something that, people would definitely be up for.
Yeah, and the thing is, I think of this again. Out of Africa at one point almost meant like punishment to me. Of like, you've done something bad, you got to watch Out of Africa or something that's going to bore the shit out of you. When I'm that age, it's like, this is Mike Nichols movies. I don't want to watch fucking Silkwood. I like Silkwood now, but I didn't want to watch Silkwood as a kid. But the idea is like, well, a movie like that today could cost anywhere from $30 to $50 million. And it's a piece of the grammar of what you'd find in expression. It's what you expect to find in a theater. There's a number of different programmers. One thing we do very well now is I kind of take for granted how good genre is, whereas some of the stuff in the old days was just retread trash. It wasn't very well done genre. And now you can find a movie like Lighthouse or The Witch or Midsummer or stuff like that, where it's like, this shit is like great. We never had genre as good as some of this stuff way back in the day. Yeah. Like the genre punches its weight with some of the best feature filmmaking today. But it's like, what if just for 1 week I was interested in seeing the equivalent of a Meryl Streep movie? If Meryl Streep is in her 40s, or no, Working Girl. Let's say Working Girl. I think that was Nichols. Yeah, Nichols, Melanie Griffith, Sigourney Weaver, Harrison Ford. Yeah, huge movie when it came out. I think it was 86. Yeah. Clean up at the Oscars, gigantic financial hit, especially in comparison to how much it costs to make. And the weird thing is, if you look at it now, no one in that cast was probably under 33 years old, something like that. Right. Melanie Griffith might have been the youngest actor. Point. Yeah. So you at the same time, think of the shit you could go see back that same year. What was probably, as a programmer sitting right next to Working Girl, was probably something absolutely great. Could have been Dolph Lundgren's Masters of the Universe, which I saw a countless number of times. It's like, I want that in the theater, and then I want right next to it, I want to see a Mike Nichols movie like Working Girl, just so I can vary it up.
You can never have too much Frank Langella, man. You can never have too much Frank Langella. It's always good stuff. But you're right. There are smaller directors that are just, like Eggers or Ari Aster. Brandon Cronenberg as another guy who is putting out some amazing. These guys are cranking out original piece of content after original piece. I'm very much looking forward to Eggers when he drops Nosferatu later this year.
Yeah, very excited.
Oh my God, yeah. I couldn't be more amped. But maybe that's something we should get back. At the time, did I appreciate Attenborough's Gandhi? No, I don't want to watch Gandhi. I don't want to watch Gandhi. No, I don't want to watch that. Are you sure that Bruce Lee movie isn't on right now? That's what I want to watch. I want to watch The Chinese Connection for the 400th time. That. But you watch it now and you're like, wow, like nobody's doing anything like that at all today. It's a fantastic suggestion. Hopefully we get back to it somewhere. Do you think we will? Or is the landscape permanently altered for, the closest you get to a rom-com? Even something like Soderbergh doing Ocean's 11 would be like such a breath of fresh air right now. Yeah. Every one of those movies are just great. I was sick. I had COVID and just sat at home watching all three. And they're just great. They're just great to watch.
Well, this is the beauty of, again, talk about the thunderheads of the theatrical experience and making movies for theatrical and making movies for streaming, and the big gulf between the two of these environments, because it's almost like they don't play together. Either you just have stuff you're trying to fill out tiles on Prime, or no, let's put it this way. First is the example of something like the Roadhouse remake, which was made for theatrical, and then they blink, and they say, okay, this is no longer a programmer in the cinema. What we're going to do is put this on streaming. So this thing that Doug Liman makes not a great movie. I saw it. I wasn't impressed, but Liman, put his heart into it. He put his whole ass into making it, and felt scorched that they didn't give him a shot at theatrical. He figures like this it's going to be completely forgotten. This work was not worth doing if it was done for streaming. It was worth doing for him if it was done theatrically. So there's a movie like that, which you figure, Jesus, this movie was buried. It never made it to the theater. And everyone's going to forget about a Roadhouse because it didn't hit the theater. At least it would have had a shot at being somewhat remembered. It would have been more than just a chit that was on Amazon that weekend. That's one idea. But then there's the other idea of all the other little bits and pieces, the feature films that the huge thresher, the combine of Netflix just swallows up out of the earth, chopping like, corn, chaff, wheat and chaff, just to fill out all the little tiles on Netflix. And there's just stuff there. I guarantee you it's good stuff. I guarantee you there is a filmmaker who's making something that I want to see. But fuck me if I could ever find it.
Yeah.
Or if somebody I trust could actually refer me back to which little tile I might actually want to see, because the algorithm doesn't help. And in some ways, it's like a gigantic potter's field of movies. It's just like an anonymous grave where they put in debtors' bones after they die of alcoholism. Just, shovel full of dirt on them, forget they're there. And it's like, I guarantee you there's good stuff in there. And then, of course, the top end of the market is the theatrical thing where it's like, great, we got Kung Fu Panda. We get some Brandon Cronenberg movies. The Ty West stuff hits theatrically, and I'm really glad to see Maxine coming out in a couple of months.
Yeah.
That's the bottom of the market. I mean, the budgetarily bottom of the market, even though it's really buzzy, sensational stuff. But it's that middle band that we're kind of like missing, which could entirely be streaming could answer that question. But it's just a fucking, dust storm. Who can know where any of that stuff is?
Yeah. I think half the time the streaming subscriptions are there and people are paying their money for the series rather than the movies.
Yeah.
They have Netflix for Cobra Kai. They have Netflix for Stranger Things. They have Max for House of the Dragon.
Mike, did you read the thing? What was really galling? Speaking, that's exactly what makes me think of this. Is that like the biggest money getters on streaming? I think were either some combination of Suits, which was the USA show about 11 or 12 seasons into syndication, 1 billion episodes of that show, which I never watched, and Ted Lasso, which was the only thing that ever kind of popped out of Apple TV, Apple Plus, whatever the fuck the channel is. And, you can say that there's all these great movies. Scorsese's made movies. They put all this, it's like, but really they sit back and they make all this passive income out of these shows that, like, what's the point of like making gigantic movies with an artist's soul behind it if 15 seasons of Suits just sits back and is a money factory just because people just put it on the background during COVID while they're washing dishes or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same with Friends. I think Friends made it to Max or something like that. It's just like it's on loop. It's on endless loop. Whereas what was it? Legendary on Apple TV had that MonsterVerse series with Kurt Russell. Nobody watched it. Nobody watched it. It's a shame because it wasn't a bad series. And, once Kurt Russell stepped in, I thought the Gen Z, the sort of characters were like insufferable, which was funny because the same Japanese girl was the girl that was Mariko in Shogun. And I'm like, why can't you act like that? Instead of having me wanting to strangle you and about whining all the time, this, that, and the other. But yeah, I mean, I just think that, they're making money off a couple of things, and I can't sort through all that. I don't know what that is, and more often than not, 8 out of 10 things don't appeal to me just to look. I'm sort of operating on instinct now. So, I mean, is this happening? Is this happening globally? Is it something, because like living in India, I mean, they have huge movies that are released like every month. The latest Bollywood, and the latest Hindi love song is playing on the, the streaming service or on the radio, and, Shah Rukh Khan and Salman Khan and, and just about everybody. There's an endless line of, Bollywood stars or, Tamil language or, just Hindi language films or series are out there. Bollywood movies are formulaic. They almost always have a happy ending. But they're big and they're brash and they're taking risks, and there's epic, there's epic things going on all the time. And it'll be this weird movie where I saw this one, it was like Shootout at Lokhandwala or something like that. And, this guy's being tortured in prison, and then the next thing they cut to a dance scene in the middle of the bar, for the guys who got away. And I'm like, Like nobody's making anything like this, over here. It just wouldn't occur to anybody. And for me, it really culminated. What was it, last year or the year before, with RRR? And then, other movies. I think that was The Animal, and these are starting to trickle over into America now. Even, at my local, Blueberry Factory multiplex, they've got a regular Hindi movie playing now. And it's usually like a week or two after it's dropped in India, it makes it to the US, and they keep doing it. So people must be seeing them. You're looking at, the Europeans, they seem to be making at least great horror. Japan and Korea making great film. That Takashi Miike or someone's always out there, trying to push that envelope. Are we? I know we're not being outdone in terms of box office numbers because they just don't have the budgets for it. But we seem to be getting outdone in quality.
And variety too, you might say. Well, this is the weird thing is that Netflix has, as much as I spit on the ground whenever I mention Netflix, just because of a general lack of quality overall in the line, they have a lot of attention, a lot of diligence paid to setting up offices in just about every single country in the West, and then a lot of places beyond. Like they have a lot of South American locations, they have a lot of African locations, they're in Southeast Asia, they're in Asia, all over the fucking place. And what their idea is to make things like Squid Game, which is comes out of Korea. And the idea is that it is, let's just say it's a Netflix product, however it is uniquely Korean built. And they think that's the best part of it.
Let me stop you. I'm going to ask you real quick. I didn't see that. Is it worth seeing?
You've seen it. You've seen it already. It was worth seeing, but you've already seen it. So I feel like you can make an opinion based on it, because if you've seen, Battle Royale or Hunger Games or one of these things.
Okay.
Yeah. Really, I'm not telling you something you don't already know here.
Okay.
It had a good level of quality to it for sure, but it certainly felt like it was a little bit of refried beans, which I love. Refried beans, they're delicious, but you know what they taste like.
Yeah.
So, the idea that Netflix is going out and doing all this scouting to get movies from North Africa, from West Africa, from South America, and send it all over the world is great. I mean, I think that the fact that we can just sit here and watch films from Buenos Aires on demand, it's like, Jesus, we couldn't get that in the old days. Certainly, I mean, the stuff that's being made out of the Korean Peninsula is probably a lot stronger, and the stuff that's still coming out of Japan is like top-notch, stuff, because they just have a heritage, the history of making films. But there's just so much talent in other weird places, around the world. I say weird, I'm being chauvinist here. So many other places in the world that have like non-traditionally build up a film market. There's great films that come out of Cameroon. There's great films that came out of South Africa. There's films all over these places. We can see them now for the first time. My own experience is being here in the Netherlands since 2019. We missed out on the theatrical experience for about 2.5 years or so, which was too bad. Although I have tried to, get an education on what was popular here over the last 50 years by downloading movies from streaming and stuff like that. And I find that the Dutch in particular, they have a very advanced film culture for a small nation. Where on one side is Germany, on the other side is Belgium, and across the North Sea is United Kingdom. So there's a lot of, and France isn't too far away. And Denmark is just on the side of the Jutland Peninsula. There's all these places that have been like leading lights in terms of making film with healthy markets today. And, one of the things that the Dutch have always dealt with is that a brain drain. Once a guy like Paul Verhoeven gets big, he would try to go to the States, and he was able to reinvent his career and become a completely different director working English language market. Their actors like Rutger Hauer was one of the biggest actors they ever produced here. Granted, there was a lot that stayed, but guys, they wanted to the big money and fabulous prizes. So for a long time, a lot of talent. Mads Mikkelsen came out of he's Danish. Yeah, he was a Dane, and the Swedes, and these people along the way. Carice Van Houten, I think, was the latest crossover from Holland when she came to North America and does a lot of genre stuff. She's great. She has a long line of romantic comedies going back to the late 90s, early 2000s. And it's like, this is what I start to see, the small films. One of the specialties of something like the Netherlands is to make these very affordable romantic comedies. Some of them are cloying, some of them are clever, and a lot of them are just filling a gap in the market where they know if you put a romantic comedy out there, a couple of girls, like a Sex in the City thing, a couple of girls on vacation, I'm over a breakup, I need to get this idea out of my head. It's like the girls go to Ibiza, and it's like, oh, I didn't expect to find this guy here. He's from Holland. I said I was going to swear off men, and yet I find myself falling for a Dutch dude while I'm on vacation in South Spain. What's going to happen? And that's, it's a formula, it's a program. And people love that shit. It's great. And I think that the particular inclination of the Dutch is to make romantic comedies in addition to other genres, but it does very well here. And, like we know that the English have continually made all these movies. The stuff that plays within the borders of England is broad comedies, broad romances and stuff like that. And I wonder if that's the same case. If you were to go to the Egyptian film market being what it is, like what are the Egyptians pumping out? What are the things coming out of Bangladesh? What is the Iranian film market like? Because we see so few movies that come out of Iran, that kind of thing.
Yeah. The last thing I remember about the last Iranian film I ever saw was A Girl Walks Alone at Night. Horror film, which was okay. It was okay.
Yeah.
But I mean, you would think eventually, at least here, everywhere, every wave eventually breaks, and these sort of smaller things that are coming along now, and these other directors that we were talking about, like Egger and Asters and Cronenberg, and all these other. You would almost hope for, although we're almost in the middle of it, sort of a 90s resurgence for these sort of smaller to mid-sized projects that are attracting, A-list talent, that we were just treated to for a whole decade. Unfortunately, interspersed, was the pandemic, which was just kind of a blight on everything. So, it's just kind of a tough time, I think, for films in general. Like I said, I've probably caught upwards of almost a dozen right now. They're still out there. Go to the movies. If you want to go, and to me, there still is no substitute. I disagree. Like that whole thing about watching something on your phone, like it just makes me want to headbutt like the desk, like right here in front of me. Like even like I went to see the new Godzilla movie, Godzilla Kong, the new Empire or whatever it was called. It was terrible. I didn't enjoy it. It's dumb. But I want to go see it on the big screen. I want to hear, all the sounds and, all the particulars and, the bad CGI. I want it all, like, right there on the screen. Even if I've got a 75-inch in the other room, I want to go see it in the theater. For me, and, maybe this is just, me, showing my age. There's no substitute for that.
Yeah.
There's no substitute for that. No matter what the film is. I think that there are certain films that should automatically be seen, like on the screen, like a Western or sci-fi or a war movie, these sorts of things. I don't necessarily need to see the latest George Clooney rom-com on the screen. That's just for me though. I don't need that. I probably won't catch it, but if I did, I'll wait till, HBO or Netflix or whatever. Who knows, where this is going to go, it seems like the streaming services are also cutting back. So, maybe we'll be bottlenecked into smaller projects that just, have more opportunity to, take those risks that we need.
Well, don't forget, Netflix is an industry of its own. There is the motion picture business, which does its very parochial job off of these lots in Los Angeles still. It's this idea that they're in Burbank, Century City, Universal City, Studio City, so on and so forth, in this one small bit of, geographic land in the United States. And it makes a very hermetic thinking about how they create these things. And right now we're still talking about chopping up Paramount. Like, who's going to wind up at Paramount at the end of the day? Is Paramount going to be sold for parts or by a hedge fund, or is it going to be sold to a big studio who just wants to suck it up and essentially hold on to it as an asset? These questions are still being decided right now, but those are film companies that work as studios. Netflix is a tech company. Netflix is punching its weight with things like Google, and what is it called? It's called the FANG companies: Facebook, Apple, Netflix. there's another N in there too. Google. I think it was FANNG. And like they are at their earnings are kind of beyond conventional understanding. They talk hundreds of billions of dollars, money that they keep offshore in Ireland and Cayman Islands and all these places along the way.
Well, you just saw that the NFL has agreed to stream Christmas football games on Netflix. Yeah. WWE Raw starting next. I mean, that's $1 billion. Netflix streaming. They're gonna. It's huge.
Swinging its dong around, man. Yeah, they're saying, like, we are the game. It's like, fuck your. The only thing that plays on, terrestrial television is sports, and it's like, and then the sports say now, well, we're going to do the NFL in particular. I mean, I just heard about this on a podcast. It's like the NFL, I think, wants to have 5 to 7 day a week NFL games, all national televised, and that is the way they move their business into the 2020s. And Netflix is like the Netflix and Apple and all these, they're all going to sort of chop up a game. They, everybody wants one game a week, and Netflix again isn't playing the same game that Columbia is, that Sony is playing, that Warner Brothers, all these conventional studios are just making games. Netflix is like remaking an industry. They have power. They have a swerve like no one else right now. It's a different ball game.
To take a risk with Zack Snyder like they did.
Yeah.
That's probably what was 160 million. But I mean, he's kind of a, he's a hot potato. You either love him or you hate him. But they let him make 4 movies out of 1 movie. And then they're going to re-release these director's cuts. And by and large, although they attract their amount of, he's kind of like a hate magnet in some, in some circles, but the movies end up staying out at number 1 for a while. Theatrical release. I had tickets to the Paris Theater in New York to go see the first part of Rebel Moon. I was, going to trek up to New York, and something happened, and I ended up not being able to get away. But I mean, it's on a different level. Yeah. It's on a different level, and I don't think enough people realize that. So that's another thing. Who knows where we're going to be 5 years from now? Where do you see it?
5 years from now, that's a good question, because I feel like the concrete they just poured is still wet. In terms of this, COVID being one thing, but I'm still not. I can't overemphasize the effect of the strikes on things, and the strikes yet to come, no less. And I don't know when the next set of union deals, if it's Teamsters or whoever it is, that the effects workers. I forget what the next series of strikes could potentially be after negotiations, but. We are missing content right now from everyone being on their ass for 7 or 8 months, however the fuck long it was. But then beyond that, when they got back to work, the first thing was like, well, in order to pay all this extra money and adhere to all these contract rules we have with actors and writers, what we're going to do is make fewer things and make them cheaper. So we're just not going to pay out at the rate they once were. Now, I think that's a temporary sort of reduction. I think that is, a reaction that just trying to make people think like, well, we need to punish the writers and the actors for their greed up front, that's their words, not mine. I'm not saying that's the thing at all. But
didn't Iger say that recently?
He said something to that.
Less content, hopefully boosting quality. At least the VFX guys will be happy about that. They're not bleeding out their eyes.
Yeah. And so, I mean, the thing is, 5 years from now, that's a good question, because you couldn't have pictured the back-to-back thing. Look, COVID and strike were all forces majeure, man. One of them was an act of God that came out of, that spat out of a bat's mouth, or a civet cat, or whatever the hell it was back in China that did it. And the strike thing was, everyone knew well what was coming. It was just an issue that was buried, and they decided to sit on it until it got out of hand. What weird things are coming up? I would say maybe the fact that within the next few years, the theatrical space is going to get weird, man. It's like all of a sudden AMCs are going to start to close. They only have enough cash. Big ones like AMC and Regal only have enough cash to run at a couple more years at the clip they're doing right now. And so I have a feeling like AMC could run out of cash in like 2 years. I think it was either 2026 or 2027. And so they really got to think about changing their business model or severely retrenching their, the idea of how many theaters they have. So theatrical could be the next shoe to drop. And then the question is like, well, once that starts going, what's left in terms of exhibition? Is it just, are we all sitting there with the fucking phone on our knees on a train somewhere going to filter. Yeah, fuck is right. But this is just that's what kids are doing right now. They're just looking on TikTok on a New York City subway without speakers on.
And they have like a 15-minute attention span.
Yeah,
like most kids won't sit through a whole movie.
Yeah,
they have to break it into 15-minute blocks.
As I like to tell my wife, I'm a stay-at-home dad with no kids, and so I actually don't have any children of my own, and I just can only base it on like what am I looking at from my quote-unquote nieces and nephews, and it's like what are their viewing habits? And those are some young fucking kids, but every now and then, a movie does get in front of them. For the most part, though, I think they love scanning on TikTok, which will be an illegal app soon enough. The way it's going.
I've never been on it. I don't. Fine. One less fucking reason to stare at your phone. It works for me. But I mean, I go to the theaters, like I said, pretty regularly. Very hard to find a full theater. I can't remember the last time I sat in a theater and it's been full. Now, for me personally, I don't go to like 8:00 on a Friday. I'll catch a matinee if I can. That's to get away from the crowds and the kids and the teenagers. Especially if it's a horror movie. That kind of thing.
Did you see Apes, by the way, this weekend or not?
Yeah, I loved it.
So when did you see it, and what was the sell through on the theater you were in?
6:30 on a Thursday evening.
Okay.
Empty.
Okay. All right.
It was fucking. But I mean, maybe people are still home having dinner. It's just me out there. It's me and like three other people. That have absolutely nothing to do ever. So we're just like, let's fucking go see some Apes.
I saw Apes. I saw it 8:00 Sunday night, and keep in mind that I'm seeing things in the middle of Amsterdam, and there's this town is 100% English language. That's just we speak Dutch here, but believe me, Amsterdam is an English speaking city. And the last great movie house in all of Europe is right in the middle of Amsterdam. One of the most beautiful theaters in the entire world. I think every single one of my American movie nerd friends would kill to be able to go to this place. Absolutely beautiful. So I make sure to go to this place, this particular theater I'm saying when I get the chance, the actual house. And so for an English language Hollywood movie, effects-driven spectacle, the big opening for that week. And maybe one of the first of the season too. Maybe the first big kick of the I guess the May, which is kind of the beginning of the summer season, had a good sell through in the theater. And I'm always surprised. I saw Barbie in the same exact house. Barbie was nearly 100% sellout. And it's like nice. I thought is Barbie American middle class shit, or does that thing sell around the world? And it's like girls came dressed in pink in the middle of Amsterdam, and they were not speaking English. They were from all over Europe, but they were there. And so it's like Apes opened in a foreign city in an English language movie with Dutch subtitles on the screen. And I would say it was a half sold out theater on a Sunday night. So it opened Friday. By the time I saw it, it's like, that again, it's such a weird thing to kind of like judge the health of the industry from the remove that I'm at. But it's so weird because you can sort of get a little bit of the heartbeat just by looking at the trends that exist even around me out here.
The last time that I saw, or cinema, like the cinema house itself was full of people. Was during the Barbenheimer weekend. I was just coming out of Oppenheimer, and it was like 6:00 on like a Friday. I think I caught like the 2:30 show or something like that, because now you got 30 minutes worth of trailers and whatever. And it was, I walked out. I'm like, oh shit. I'm like, this is good. Like people are here. And they looked like they were in a good mood. And you're right. There were lots of girls who wanted to see Barbie. They had like a guy and a girl, like a Barbie and a Ken. I don't know who they were employed by. I guess Regal or whatever, to greet people at the door. This, that, and the other. That was good. The only other thing that I saw where the theater, the house itself was relatively full was Late Night with the Devil.
Wow.
Late Night with the Devil, I caught like at 8:00 on Sunday. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh shit, like this is okay. This has got people in it.
But was that the place where it was playing? Did you have an option to go somewhere else is the question.
This was the first week that it was released, and my local Regal Cinema House did not have it. I had to drive about 5 miles further in a different direction to go see it. So, yeah, you're right. That may have driven traffic a particular way, or split it in half, or doubled the number that were in there. But if I wanted, I would have had to have waited another week. to catch it at my local place. And so I went to this creepy ass theater in the middle of like Turnersville, New Jersey, and it's dark and dusky, and like one of the letters are out. I think it was like Eagle Cinema, and like if fucking Vincent Price had like jumped out at me, like I would have been completely like, prepared but scared as shit. I'm like, what the hell is this place? So we're gonna be covering Late Night with the Devil tonight. So I look forward to talking about it now that it's hit Shudder.
Yeah.
But like I said, 12 movies. I'm not even halfway through the year. There's still things out there doing it. I have more of an annoyed than a negative perspective or outlook on, because if I make it to 24 movies over the course of 2024, that's not a terrible year. And most of them I like I wasn't crazy about Kong or anything like that. But even, they're doing smaller movies. Like I went to see Cabrini. And that was fantastic. It was just a fantastic film. Or like I went to see, they're doing like Fathom Events, this sort of thing. So I saw Alien, or, I went to see, I went to see The Chosen. I went to see the whole season in the theater. And that was full. That was full, those sorts of things. So there are these smaller things that are happening that are of high quality that people are going to see. I don't know that it's making up for the billions in red that, these movie companies are in, and I don't know where that leaves us. But,
it's
I don't know what I can do other than go, and pay my money and buy some popcorn and tell other of my friends, and anybody that'll listen to go to the fucking movies.
This is why you asked me the question. This is why we're talking about this tonight. And I feel like, we're playing around in the same sandbox online, and for all the shit that Twitter gets, for all the shit that internet communication gets, I kind of feel like this is generally still how I'm finding the key shit that I'm watching. The best, I'm doing at 40 years old, I'm doing the best viewing of my entire life. The treasures are still untold. There's just all this bounty left over to watch, and just paying attention to smart people when they recommend good stuff to me is just making these nights incredible. Like, it changes my life simply watching a great film, sitting back, thinking about it, making a letterboxed, rating of it, remembering what it was like, and then looking at that list. Like you said, you're ticking off the digits that you've done so far this year and what you could potentially watch in total in terms of new movies at the end of the year. Not even to count all the archival stuff you're watching, all the legacy back title stuff that you're watching too. And yeah, I mean, it's like, it's grim. And that's why it's sobering to ask these questions and to discuss how bad it's going to get along the way. And yet I still feel like, man, I'm not in a bad mood about it. Just because there's still, you can still go out there and watch something like Godzilla -1 or Maxine is coming. It's like, how bad could things be if those are still coming our way?
Fucking Furiosa's coming. You know what I'm looking forward to? I'm looking forward to that stupid Twisters movie with Glenn Powell. I loved Twister. I loved Twister with Paxton and Helen Hunt and Philip Seymour Hoffman. I thought it was great. I'm looking forward to Eggers and Nosferatu. I think that's going to be scary as shit. I will disagree with you about the Roadhouse movie because I like that movie. I liked it.
All right.
But I thought the first Roadhouse movie was stupid. Like, this guy's beating up, low-level mob bosses with his fists. I'm like, it's supposed to be stupid, And so, even if I see a movie that isn't that great, I think it's really important not to turn into a fucking rage monster about it. Like, relax. This isn't an episode of the Hulk, where you're just going to start turning green and, like smashing shit. Relax, buddy. Relax. So, hold on a second. Patrick said, I recommend Cinephobia releasing films. They have been dropping great films.
That's a label. I see. Okay, cool.
Okay. And he said, WWE, $5 billion over 10 years with options.
Yeah, man.
The Vits, what was better than that? And I was so disappointed that The Northman but people just didn't get it. And probably it was right after the lockdowns happened and that sort of thing. But there were a couple of things with that film.
It's hardcore. And you have a naked knife fight in a volcano at the end. How do you say no to that movie,
Exactly. Knives and schlongs are swinging and, it's a fucking Viking movie. But I think what people didn't get is that it wasn't one of those movies where characters changed their fate. And we're going to start to wrap it up here. But, instead he just kind of embraced his fate. He was like, I got to get off the boat. I want to, it's Anya Taylor-Joy. Who doesn't want to stay on the boat with Anya Taylor-Joy? Nope. I gotta go take care of, my family. And the people didn't get that. It wasn't Harry Potter where he could just, like change everything, that sort of shit. Yeah. All right. Is there anything else that we have not discussed at any particular point you'd like to make?
No, I think you've carved out all the things you were very kind to send me some notes beforehand. No, I just think that, one of the things that I like to harp on over and over again, especially when I get in front of a cinephile like you and the people who potentially watch this, is that I think that we have great discussions, and the watching the movie is part of it. And I see some people say it's like, oh, some people watch movies just to make a take on it so they can go bash somebody over the head with it later on social media or, I don't know, in person. And I just sort of feel like I watch these things as a communal experience. This is really communing with human beings and making new friends. At the age of 48, I'm still having a good track record of making new friends with people I would not have met in any other venue besides doing something like this. Cutting together, or cutting out, I should say, geography and distance between people and weird cultural things. And it's like the fact that I can have a bullshit conversation about Star Trek 3 with my friends in Cardiff, Wales. And we did a podcast about this a week and a half ago because it's the 40th anniversary of Star Trek 3 Search for Spock. It just like cuts away years, cuts away thousands of miles, it cuts away differences, and it just gets everybody on the same page. And it's a tonic, and I just find that you find your crowd, if you find a way to talk with them and, hone it down to the people who you really think you can vibe with. I just have so much fun doing this, and the movies are great. And I just feel like the community is even better on top of that.
The expression I have for it is that this is what the internet is supposed to be.
Yeah. Excellent way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah. I go on tonight, Late Night with the Devil, with my friend Eric. He's just outside of Chicago. Never met him before. Never met him in person before. And I have some friends that are, like from my immediate circle that I've known for decades that I keep, as regular guests on here. I know them to be longtime film fans like ourselves. I've got another friend on tonight. He's from Dublin. He's been a friend of the show for going on 4 years now. Got another one on tonight. She's in London. So, I mean, it's this connection that happens because we have this shared appreciation for film. Even if we don't agree, we don't agree on a particular film. Like she said, she doesn't like Late Night with the Devil. There's going to be a little chop busting going on, but, it's all good natured. And in the end, we're all there for the same reason. So, we have those films to be thankful for, making these opportunities available to us, including this conversation right now. So thanks to Attenborough, thanks to Gandhi, and
Mike Nichols, Melanie Griffith, everybody.
Thanks to everybody out there, for what you do, and for what it's worth. We appreciate you. So my thanks to Bill Scurry out there in Europe there, and the Netherlands, Amsterdam, and I appreciate your time, and maybe we'll take some time down the road and meet up again sometime.
I think it can happen. Very nice to be here. Thanks for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. I just want to make a quick announcement for the channel. I have started a second channel, which has a very narrow and specific route, and that is called Shigon Channel. And one of my favorite genres of film are classic Japanese samurai film. And so if you are a fan of Shogun, you should also know that there are volumes and volumes of high quality Japanese films out there with great stories. They're not like the run, shot Chinese action films. These are just great, character-driven stories with some action that are out there. And I'm covering those movies as well, one video a week. So give me a look up on there, and I'd appreciate it. All right, that's it for us. My thanks again to Bill Scurry, and Bill's information and his link up information for his YouTube channel and the X profile are in the description. Have a good one, everybody, and we'll see you all in the next video. All right, take care, everyone. God bless you.